All right, so we've put Teresa to bed. She's gone. There's no getting in bed with Teresa for you guys tonight. I'm sorry. She's asleep. She's not feeling all that great. Has to go to work tomorrow. The cat and dog are fed. They're happy, probably sleeping. They're both old animals. And we've got stuff happening, breaking news on a Wednesday night in the world of pinball. So we're going to cover that tonight here on episode 125 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast commentary. I am a man out of quarters. How's it going tonight? I'm joining you not live from San Diego, California, here on Wednesday, December 10th, 2014. This year is almost over. It's almost done. We need to recap this year soon, but that's not what's going on tonight. Tonight, we have a death match, a showdown. It's coming. It's coming. But first, I was having just a normal evening. I was watching television with the lovely Teresa. I was answering some emails from like 3 months ago on my Coast to Coast Pinball Gmail account. I was counting shirts for the t-shirt sale that's coming. And then I logged on to Pinside, and things were happening.
Forum static.
A post in the All Pinball subforum entitled, Dennis Nordman leaves Highway Pinball. And this post about Dennis Nordman leaving Highway Pinball was posted by the original poster here, one Dennis Nordman. So this is from the horse's mouth, as they say this evening. Kind of a shocker to me, because I was at Expo. I saw Dennis with Andrew Highway. I saw the toys they showed off at their seminar for the Alien game. I think Highway Pinball had a really good expo. I think Full Throttle was better received than I had maybe thought it was going to be, based on maybe my bias against the theme. I think people came away with really positive vibes on the gameplay of Full Throttle. I heard, all sorts of different players saying how much they liked it, how fast it was, how good it looked, how solid it felt, and that was good. And then to top it all off, they had the biggest, I think, announcement of Expo with the theme and the securing of the license for Aliens, the movie's Aliens, into a pinball machine with Dennis Nordman designing the game. That's kind of a big deal. And I tend to sandbag some of these things a little bit on this show just because I know how long the lead times are going to be on these stories, and I don't want to burn out too early on them. So I maybe have not pushed it to the front as much as I would like. But this sort of changes things, because reading the posts that have gone on the Pinside forums and talking to people in the industry about Highway Pinball, I don't feel they were being taken very seriously until Expo, until Alien was announced. I think that was the turning point. I think people were intrigued and wanted to see Full Throttle. It's not that they were being disregarded, but I don't think people were actively viewing Highway Pinball as one of the next big players in the independent, not Stern pinball manufacturing business. So you took Highway Pinball, who clearly has the resources, because we saw them build a bar-type game for Bacardi this year. They have a large manufacturing site that we've seen photos of that's like getting prepped to build pinball machines. We have multiple designs. We have Full Throttle designed and working prototypes of the game at multiple shows throughout the year. And then you bring in, and if you listen to Andrew Highway, he clearly has lots of experience in coin-op and pinball, so there's no reason not to think that the guy knows what he's doing and talking about. Then you bring in Dennis Nordman to design a game. Well, Dennis Nordman has sort of been, I think he and John Papaduke have, to a large degree, sort of the odd men out, with Stern and Jersey Jack and other companies having people come on board and design games. And in reality, that's not totally true, as Dennis Nordman and Greg Ferris obviously had started Whiz Bang Pinball and designed their Whoa Nelly Big Juicy Melons, which now Stern is going to build next summer. And you have John Papaduke, obviously, with his own Zidware company doing his own thing. Story for another day. But Dennis Nordman, it seemed like, was sort of on the outside looking in, no longer working with any of the major players. And oftentimes, when you hear about a guy who was sort of, in my industry, you hear it a lot, because I work in a smallish industry, musical instruments, guitars specifically. You hear of somebody who was once very successful and then just can't seem to land that steady, full-on gig, it's usually because there's some sort of giant personality issue with that person. It's usually they're tough to work with, just to pull the curtains back a little bit. From all accounts, from everybody who I've ever spoken to, including my brief interactions with Dennis Nordman himself, that is not the case here. This guy seems like an absolute good dude, sweetheart. Everybody loves Dennis Nordman. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think it's just a lot of timing and things like that. So, this announcement was startling because, like I said, Highway Pinball, I think, had a lot of momentum ending this year with probably the hottest theme announcement since The Big Lebowski and the most sought-after kind of combo of company theme designer going right now that we haven't, maybe seen a game yet. As far as like pre-alpha stage games, sort of the concept stage, they're there, and I was probably underrating it a little bit, and it will be very interesting to watch now. How does the pinball community, the pinsiders, the early adopters, the pre-order crowd react to this news? So the official post that Dennis posted on Pinside this evening, pretty brief, pretty straight to the point. I'll just read it for you. He says, "I have decided to end my relationship with Highway Pinball." Okay, so let's be real clear. Dennis is saying he has decided to quit or stop having his name attached further to Highway Pinball. He says, "I am not the game designer on the Alien project. I made the initial playfield drawing and created concepts for 4 new playfield toys. The drawing can change drastically as the game develops. Andrew announced that the game would be ready in April, and I can't possibly agree with this. I've seen the video that he submitted to Fox, the license holder, and if the game turns out anything like this, it will be great." It's a one paragraph brief statement, but it's sort of mind-blowing in what's going on there, because halfway through that thing, I'm thinking this guy's like kind of ticked off. I'm thinking Dennis is like, man, forget Highway Pinball. Like, they're out of their minds. You clearly can see he's frustrated, saying that there's no way that this April time frame can happen. But then he quickly and directly finishes his paragraph where he's announcing that he left the company, saying that I've seen the video that he, Andrew Highway, submitted to Fox, and if the game turns out anything like this, it will be great. So this is what we know. We know that Dennis drew the playfield layout. We saw the layout. We have it in black and white on the internet. And we know he designed some playfield toys. And we saw one of those actually in I think it was 3D printed, I'm guessing, or molded of some sort at Expo. So that's very interesting. It's brief and to the point, yet there's a lot of complexity going on in there, because he says very clearly, I am not the game designer on the Alien project. I did draw the playfield. So that alone would be enough to leave you kind of spinning. But then, not long after, we have a response from Highway Pinball. Andrew Highway posts in that same thread on page 2. It's top of page 2. "Just to clarify our position, Dennis has indeed designed the playfield layout of Alien Pinball, and development of the game continues even though Dennis has now moved on from our company. Although Dennis has indeed left us, we still consider his work to be complete with us, and development continues with our team." So Andrew is kind of saying, no, Dennis. Yeah, you left, and yes, you drew the playfield, and you're not the game designer, but you did what we asked you to. We did what you wanted, what we wanted. You were done. And then this is where I start maybe seeing where the conflict might be. I can't help but wonder out loud, since I have this podcast and I'm allowed to do so, did Dennis intend on designing the entire game, the whole thing, the shebang, the shots, the toy interaction, the whole thing, and not just a layout? Drawing a layout and designing a whole game are different. I don't know. It seems like there's a little bit of a shift in there somewhere. Highway Pinball continues in their post. "Dennis's announcement is unfortunate, but it is his prerogative to move on to other projects." Okay, so Is that just saying the cliched, we wish him well in his future endeavors, or is that telling in that sentence, it is his prerogative to move on to other projects? So that makes me start wondering, well, hold on a second. Maybe somebody's asking Dennis to design stuff. Maybe somebody wants Dennis to work for them, and Dennis is basically opting out to go do that and needs to leave Highway, or Highway didn't want him working on two things. I'm not sure. Highway Pinball continues. Are we behind schedule at the moment? Question mark. By approximately 1.5 weeks, yes. The prototype playfield gets cut next week and ball guides either just before or after Christmas. Testing of the prototype is weeks, not months away. As for April production, we have a fully playable version of the game, complete with rules, on a digital platform already. So they have designed the game in some sort of digital CAD workup type of situation, or one of these virtual pinball emulator systems, which is probably what it is, and they have the game up and running that way. I apologize to our customers for having to give an update his way. His way. I wonder if that's supposed to be this way. Not sure. It says, I apologize to our customers for having to give an update his way, but it was not our choice that this post appeared in this way. I don't know. Interesting. We will always be grateful to Dennis for his contribution to this game and continue to have the utmost respect for his work as one of pinball's design legends. So, what does this actually mean for aliens? I have theories totally based in nothing but conjecture and in my own mind just working. I have absolutely already reached out to Andrew to see if he'd like to come on the show or talk or say anything about it. I'm guessing he probably won't. I think these were both fairly classy statements by both gentlemen. They both seem to respect each other. That's a good thing. Glad nobody's out there slinging mud at one another. But there's definitely something happening here, and it'll be interesting to see how the layout that we've seen already on Aliens changes. Dennis, makes a big point that things can change. I'm not the game designer. I drew you a layout. That can change. So that could possibly be part of the rift that's developed here. Highway Pinball is very much wanting to keep his name attached to this for obvious reasons. I think having Dennis Nordman's name on what I think, for all intents and purposes, is going to be your first real game that sells in any quantity. I cannot, with any imagination in my mind, think that many Full Throttles have been sold. And that's not a knock. That's just reality. I mean, I've actually gotten some emails, people telling me I'm too hard on Full Throttle. I just think the reality is there hasn't been a lot of buzz, and I don't know anybody who's pre-ordered that game. But I do know people who had money in on Alien already. So, of course they want to keep Dennis Nordman's name to it. He's one of the guys. There's only so many of those guys that had sort of been anointed pinball designers, and the only people that could design pinball machines. Is that true? No, I don't think that's true at all. I think Ben Heck designed a pinball machine this year. And I think Jersey Jack is designing pinball machines with some other folks. So I think, sure, there's lots of other people. Scott Golick's designed a pinball machine. There's other people who can design pinball machines. But as this hobby is sort of entrenched and rooted in a lot of things retro and legacy and history, there are people, especially people who are of the age and of the income and of that bracket, that are buying games sight unseen early days, who sort of remember fondly the glory days of Bally Williams and Gottlieb and Data East. And if you're one of those people who worked at those companies in those glory years, your name carries a certain bit of cachet. So where do we go from here? What happens? Where does Dennis Nordman go from here? Is there something telling in Andrew Highway saying that it's his prerogative to move on to other projects? Well, I think we know that Dennis and Greg Ferris's Wonelli game is actually coming to be built here in the next 180 days or so. I think Gary Stern said on the latest Spooky Pinball podcast, I think June was the date he actually threw out to Charlie. So that's a reality. They haven't priced it yet. That's going to be a bit. I mean, if Wonelli comes out in the $3,000 to $4,000 price range, brand new in a box, shipped to you, they're going to sell a lot of games. I think a lot of people who've been buying DMD and LCD type, modern games here would probably be all in on a $37.99 Whoa Nelly. Something brand new, new in a box, untainted by a great designer, great artist, built in the Stern factory. Yes. If Whoa Nelly comes out at the same price as the Walking Dead Pro, I don't know that the value is going to be seen there. I think it will be viewed as a little too retro at that point. Remember, no DMD, no ramps, no real toys. Basically it's an EM styled game with modern parts. I mean, if they could get the game to $29.99, that thing could sell for $29.99. They're gonna sell a lot. They'll sell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I think if it's $49.99, they're gonna sell 100-ish or so. I guess more of as a collectible at that point. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So maybe Dennis is working on more stuff with Stern. That's possible, right? Dennis is very close with Spooky Pinball. Maybe Spooky Pinball is seeing, that they're getting closer and closer to selling out of America's Most Haunted. We don't know if Wrath of Olympus is going to hit the line or not. I think that's still up in the air. I need to get an update for you guys on that. And maybe Spooky Pinball's looking at, we want to wait a little bit longer on Pinball Zombies from Beyond the Grave. Maybe Dennis Nordman is going to design something with them. I don't know. Totally just throwing that out there. I think all signs point to Pinball Zombies being the next Spooky Pinball release. I don't think that's going to get delayed much farther. I would suspect we see that game starting to be built sometime next year. That's my guess, based on what Charlie said. Maybe Dennis is going to come on Coast to Coast Pinball soon and give that tell-all interview. Maybe that's what's next for him. Don't hold your breath. What's next for Highway Pinball? So Highway Pinballs, it's very interesting where they are because they've got this game pretty much done and ready to be built in full throttle, but I don't know if they have the demand there to go real deep. I think the demand's going to be there for Alien. Will there be some people who maybe buy Alien and then buy the kit for full throttle, since it'll be less than $4,000 to get another game to put in your Alien cabinet? Maybe. I don't know. I'll give you some live running commentary on the show. I just literally saw a message come in from Andrew Highway, so I cannot help myself but to go. I'm not going to read you what he wrote me because it is in private, but I will just at least make sure he didn't say, yes, tell everybody, etc. Okay, no. He did not say that, but I will tell you that Andrew will likely be coming on the show in the near future. So if you've got things you'd like to know from Highway Pinball or you'd like me to discuss with Highway Pinball, be sure and you can, of course, send that in to coast2coastpinball@gmail.com. We'll try and talk to Andrew about that, since he did just reply and did not blow me off or anything. He was very nice just now. That's good. Highway Pinball claims that past Full Throttle and Aliens, there's more games, that they have 3 more games already designed. And in fact, in sort of an interesting twist, one of those games is designed by one of those big names in pinball. John Trudeau has designed a game that he designed before he went to work for Stern. He designed a game with Highway Pinball. I think some people probably forget that a couple years ago we were talking about John Trudeau joins Highway Pinball, or a year and a half ago. It wasn't that long ago. And he did do a design, and that's apparently game number 3, 4, or 5. Highway Pinball is setting themselves up not to be a, quote, boutique builder. They want to be a pinball machine manufacturer and factory, and I think being based in Europe is going to give them some very decided advantages to make that happen. And it's interesting. I think that some of the things that we did here at Expo that were also very interesting was, and I don't have all the exact details, and I'll surely try and get into this with Andrew when we finally speak for the show. There were some upgrades to the Alien LE versus the Alien Standard model that he was telling people would be for sale separately to add on to the standard model, which I think is a fantastic idea. I think that Stern would be smart in adopting that idea. And they're doing something similar with these mods we're seeing. I know it's all over my Facebook feed right now that, the Stern mod packs for The Walking Dead are out. Well, Highway Pinball was promoting some sort of fiber optic lighting for the ramps in Alien, and that was going to be on the limited edition. But Andrew told people it would also be for sale as an add-on to the standard model. I think that's brilliant. That's good thinking. It's extra revenue. It's probably a highly profitable thing. I know in my business, accessories, they're lower priced, higher profit. That's good for someone's bottom line. And so I think Stern should probably look at, maybe the LEs come with certain features that are easily purchased afterwards. Just a thought. So I liked that I heard that coming out of Highway Pinball. So I will leave this at that for now, but I thought it was interesting. I wanted to talk about it. I'm very curious to see where Mr. Dennis Nordman ends up. I'm very curious to watch Highway Pinball. They had an April timeline on Aliens hitting the manufacturing line, which Dennis clearly calls out as one of his issues. So this may just simply be an issue of Dennis wanting to redesign, rework, go back to the drawing board, fix, and Highway Pinball saying, no, we're going to build this game in 120 days. And Dennis just saying, I don't want to do that. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want my name attached to something that we're going to build just like it is. I want to be able to revise and revamp. That may be the simple answer. I don't know. We will try to do our best to find out. So, interesting times for Highway Pinball. Showdown. All right, it's Showdown. I had a request right after the first Showdown. Somebody asked me, could you please do a Showdown between AC/DC Premium and Metallica Premium? Seems obvious, right? I agree, it does seem obvious. So, in this corner to my left, this is a virtual corner. There is actually no corner. Don't think that I have a corner with a game in it. In this corner to my left, we'll call it the red corner, stands AC/DC Premium, or Limited Edition, Let There Be Arc, whatever. We're going to go with the premium version of AC/DC. And we're using that version because I don't like the Pro version. Pro version AC/DC is not on my radar. I don't think I'll ever buy it, ever. I don't like the missing drop targets, cross ramp, stupid playfield art in the middle, etc. We're talking about AC/DC Premium. If there's no clear lower playfield, we aren't talking about it. And in this corner to my right, again, virtual corners, people, we're going to call it the blue corner. We have Metallica Premium. I have a caveat to this, though, and we'll talk about that caveat towards the end, I think. But this is Metallica Premium or Limited Edition Master of Puppets, if it must be. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about AC/DC versus Metallica. It's a showdown. So if you were listening back in episode 122 and we debuted Showdown and we had Funhouse versus Creatures of Black Lagoon, what I'm doing here is I'm taking these two games, I'm putting them in a head-to-head deathmatch battle for which game this guy, would buy. We're going to go through the theme. We're going to go through the design/layout, the toys, the artwork, the sound, the gameplay, the lastability, which I haven't figured out if that's a word or not, and the value. And then we're going to see who won more categories. We're going to talk about the little bit of extra mojo that some machines just sort of have, that X factor, and we're going to declare a winner. We're going to do that tonight here on Coast2Coast Pinball in episode 125. Full disclosure, I've played both of these games quite a bit. I would not tell you that I know the rules intimately. I know the basics. I know how to get to lots of multi-balls on both machines. I know how the tournament players tend to attack these because I've watched Bone Karen's pop-up videos on both games. I have watched, the Sharps of the world, the Lefkoffs of the world, some of the best players. I've watched them play these games in tournament settings. I have watched total newbies play these games, beginners, and I have played multiple examples of them. So I do have some fairly informed, from my level, information as we do this. So, starting off the showdown, we're going to talk about the theme of these games, and we're going to start with AC/DC. So, obviously here, the theme of this game is AC/DC. It's the band. It's one of the greatest rock bands of all time, the Australian boys. This band started out with one lead singer. The guy died, and then they got another lead singer, so they went from Bon Scott to Brian Johnson, and they found like the other dude in the world who sounded basically like that guy. Brilliant. And they put out maybe their most famous and best album ever with the new guy, Back in Black. So the theme is this band. Why it's great? Why that's a great theme? Because they were kind of cartoonish. They were one of those like early bands that took hard rock and sort of had a little bit of humor to it. They, Angus Young, the guitar player, is the mascot for the band, I guess is the word I'm trying to use. He wears a schoolboy outfit. He plays a Gibson SG. He does devil horns. He moons the crowd. Thankfully, we don't have that anymore on the game. But they had, a whole lot of Rosie. They had giant blow-up Rosie doll on stage back in the 90s. They were colorful. They were fun. Fantastic rock and roll band with just so many songs. As a theme, okay. It's okay. It's a great band, but is it a great theme? Well, we went for the devil thing. We went to the hell theme because they talk about hell in their songs a lot. And when I was really little, and I used to hear songs like Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be or Highway to Hell, I didn't really understand hell, and I just knew it was sort of a word I wasn't supposed to say when I was a little kid, so it seemed dangerous. But as I got older, I quickly realized that a lot of what AC/DC is doing with their talk about hell and dirty deeds, which is actually not in the game, but a lot of their sort of, quote, dangerous stuff and dark stuff is really with the tongue firmly planted in the cheek. So it's an interesting one because they themselves, they're like dudes in their 60s now, and they are not the most interesting thing in the world to look at. Now, Angus Young himself, yeah, pretty awesome to look at, for sure. The lead singer, Brian Johnson, I don't know if he's so awesome to look at. But they are iconic, if nothing else. Their logo is iconic, if nothing else. And I think it's obviously it worked, because it's a very successful game. That's one thing about these games in the Showdown. They're both very successful. So AC/DC definitely has that icon rock band thing going on for them. And you saw that with the limited editions and premiums. They did a red-themed, premium, but they also had the two limited editions, the Let There Be Rock LE, which was sort of red armor and lots of red, kind of is the main color, and then the Back in Black LE, which was the black armor and a much darker looking theme. And those have shot up in value and stayed up pretty high. So, Hell's Bells. And For Those About to Rock, and they famously sung with these cannons in it, and then their big shows would have cannons. So they took elements out of all these different songs with the Highway to Hell, the Hell's Bells, the cannon. They incorporated that into the theme. Okay? So, pretty good. Swing our attention over to the blue corner and Metallica. Metallica took themselves way, way, way more seriously for the first decade or so of their career. And they don't have all their original members. So that was one thing that was kind of neat about AC/DC. The main guys that you knew were the same guys the whole way through. Metallica's had a couple different bass players, but other than that, it's the same three dudes. I think AC/DC switched drummers. I can't speak for sure on their bass player. So mostly same guys. Metallica at some point, as they got older, sort of pushed up the comedic and sort of silly vibe a little bit more with their band, and I watched it happen because I grew up, listening to Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All, the Black Album, which was their quote selling out moment to some. I was there for all that, and they cut their hair and they did the Load Reload albums, and they sort of started getting a little more hokey with some of the things they did. And then in the modern era, they've used this kind of the Dirty Donnie artwork to sort of caricature a lot of imagery around the band, and you see that with the use of the theme in Metallica. They're drawn in most of the artwork as sort of these like monstery looking guys. Even their more realistic pictures on the playfield have like a monstery vibe to them and a certain aesthetic. They've always had lots of imagery around the band, like snakes. As far back as the Black Album, you saw the really faint dark gray snake on the cover of the Black Album. Ride the Lightning obviously had that famous album cover with like the electric chair. They sang dark songs back then about death and dying, and there was no tongue-in-cheekness of Ride the Lightning or For Whom the Bell Tolls. There just wasn't. It was very dark. So one might think with that it wouldn't work as well as a theme. However, I think the modern Metallica mixed with the Dirty Donny artwork and then pulling bits of their history actually worked out pretty great. I think it was a really good theme. Awesome theme. I think them as a band, I think the guys, James Hetfield, Kirk Hammett, Lars Ulrich, I think guys like that have really become larger than life to some people, sort of iconic, like Angus Young. And whereas I don't think the whole band of AC/DC is iconic, Angus Young is, I think the whole band in Metallica is sort of iconic. Even Mr. Trujillo, the bass player, who's been there a long time now. It seems like just yesterday Jason Newsted left the band. It seems like just yesterday Cliff Burton died. But is it James Trujillo? See, I don't even know his first name. That's bad. Has a vibe, definitely a thing about him. So I think it worked out really well. For me, it's interesting because I was closer to Metallica growing up, music-wise. I'm a guitar player, I play guitar, and I learned a lot of Metallica songs. I learned a few AC/DC songs along the way, but AC/DC was definitely, they started in the 70s. That's a 70s band that also was very popular in the 80s. Metallica was an 80s band that was also very popular in the 90s, and then still into the 2000s. I have to say, for a theme for a pinball machine, they're kind of tied in my head. However, the approach that was taken for Metallica by using the character of this kid named Sparky with his tongue hanging out in the electric chair, riding the lightning, the snake, the big hammer, the Injustice for All hammer, I guess you'd call that, the coffin. I feel like with the artwork on the playfield adding to the theme, and that's sort of cheating because artwork's its own category, I'm going to give the edge here to Metallica. Okay? I think that it's really close. It's like a tie/advantage Metallica. All right. Let's move on. Design and layout. So if we look at the AC/DC design and layout, this is a Steve Ritchie game. AC/DC is a Steve Ritchie game. But it's interesting in its layout because it has two ramps, which that's nothing new. But their angles, I think, are fairly unique. There's kind of a wide left orbit on this game that's a pretty deep shot. There's drop targets up in front to the left. There's stand-up targets to the right. There's the bell up the middle, which is a cool toy for sure. But the layout of this game, when you look at it, you really have, taking away the targets, when you look at shots, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots. Then you add in the drop targets, 6, 7, stand-up targets, 8. 8 shots. That's pretty good. From the shooter lane on this one, you're going to go into the rollover targets for a real basic type skill shot into the pop bumpers. I don't love games, and I've said this many times on the show before, where the ball trickles out of the pop bumpers and then dribbles off something and then heads down towards the flippers. Walking Dead kind of does that and drives me insane. Big Bang Bar is another game that comes to mind that does that. There's others. And AC/DC has a little bit of that. When the ball comes off to the pop bumpers to the left and dribbles down through the bell lane, it can oftentimes just roll straight down the middle, and that drives me nuts. Don't love that at all. Those drop targets up the middle are dangerous. Very, very dangerous. The stand-up targets on the edges of the ramps, I guess it's the right edge of the right ramp and then both edges of the left ramp, those are also dangerous. So if you're in the mode where the targets are the increased scoring, which I believe is the Thunderstruck mode because there's the lightning bolt, light up lights, cool lightning bolts above them, those are dangerous. So I like the layout. I like the reverse right ramp that reverses right back down to the cannon. The cannon's obviously something you have to talk about as far as layout. You shoot at the drop targets to the left. That's pretty cool. When it came out, it felt so fresh and unique. When this game first started, I remember the first time I played it in a bowling alley, it just felt such a better layout than what Stern had been doing. And I think that makes me really favor this layout a lot. I mean, it's a fan layout, right? It's a fan layout with a bunch of targets around it. The cross ramp, the diverter, which can move the Habitrail across over to the cannon shot, I think is a unique design. Pretty smart to do that. When we look at Metallica, Metallica is set up also as a fan design, but it's set up in sort of a friendlier flow pattern in my mind, because it's almost symmetrical in that you have these obvious orbit shots. You have nearly, in my head when I'm not looking at the game, they're symmetrical ramps, which they're actually not. The right ramp is much closer to the flippers than the left ramp. You have inline drop targets, which is awesome. I love that. Huge fan of that. And then you have a big bash toy straight up the middle. And AC/DC has the bell toy, which is a bash toy straight up the middle, which is a really difficult shot. Sparky's not that difficult of a shot. You have a magnet in front of Sparky, which obviously can wreak havoc. The snake mech, which on the premiums, which is kind of what we're talking about here, seems to catch the ball better, which has had lots of issues, which I won't get into. I've not experienced those issues, but all you got to do is go read owner threads about Metallica and know there's been issues with the snake mechanism and the hammer mechanism and the ball being pushed through the playfield into the coffin. I think that's freaking awesome. I think that's fantastic layout and design there. Again, though, skill shot goes over rollovers into pop bumpers. It can go out left and it can go out right. There's a scoop on the Metallica playfield, which AC/DC does not have a scoop type underground shot, but it has the entire lower playfield, which I didn't mention before. But there's that, obviously there's this underworld playfield, which honestly, now that I've played this game enough times, I could do without the underworld playfield, although it does look cool and is a much better visual than the big Angus Young face on the Pro that's in there in the middle. As far as layout goes, I think I give the edge to AC/DC. The design and layout edge. I think some of the lighting things they did with the lightning bolts is awesome. I think all the drop targets are cool. I like the placement of the ramps. The ramps feel so good to hit. I like that they both loop right back around to the right and left, which I guess Metallica does exactly that too, except the right Metallica ramp sort of loops. Actually, it loops to the left and back in. It doesn't do a straight return backwards. That's a tough one for me. I think I give the design and layout to AC/DC on this one. So I'm going to put a check mark on the AC/DC. And that's just sort of a vibe thing. I like the way their orbit shot works a lot. And I like the design of hitting the ball back into the jukebox shot to sort of restart and reset and pick a theme, pick new music. I like that design. I like that layout. I like the cannon. I like the use of the cannon. AC/DC gets the design and layout. I give it to that one. Toys. All right, so let's just break it down on toys. You look at AC/DC premium. I've got a big locomotive toy up in the background. It's totally not interactive with the game, so it doesn't matter. I've got plastic stick figure band member guys on a moving background, or I guess they're moving against a background on the back right. They move around during multi-ball. It's kind of lame. Not good toys there. The bell toy on the playfield is actually pretty awesome. I think that's well documented. The bell toy is cool. I like that a lot. The cannon, it's one of my favorite cannon type shooting things ever on a pinball machine. There hadn't been a ton of them. This one's my favorite. Not even close. I like it a lot. However, it gets a little old after a while. I think it loses some of its spark and its fun after repeated plays. So those are kind of the toys on AC/DC. I don't think I'm missing anything toy-wise. If you look at Metallica, obviously you have a giant Sparky Bash toy, which not only has a magnet in front of it to interact with you, but the head and moves around once you get into the multi-ball mode where you electrocute the toy. That's pretty awesome. I gotta say that alone probably wins toys for Metallica. The snake toy, I know there's been problems. Good idea, though, and the snake spitting the ball out, that's pretty awesome. The hammer to some people probably is a negative because it's big and it kind of gets in the way of your view. And I see that as an argument against the hammer. However, what the hammer actually does by pushing the ball down into the playfield and physically lock the balls in the see-through coffin, I love it. I think it's cool. I really like it. Toys, I give Metallica the edge. All right. Artwork. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, artwork's next. I don't think there's much question here. Metallica wins on artwork. The Dirty Donnie artwork changed the game, so to speak. See what I did there? For artwork on pinball. I think maybe forever. Because when we got Mustang after that, and Star Trek after that, there were a lot of people going, meh. And now Walking Dead's a little bit better. But I think artwork's going to need to be a big thing on pinball machines moving forward after Metallica. Metallica, to be quite honest, a lot of people who were not into the band Metallica went ahead and bought the game because of this awesome, colorful artwork with this fantastic design. It's the right amount of busy so that it looks like it's filled out, but not too cluttered with everything being too small, with the right amount of obvious design elements. And they used the imagery really well with the crosses and the snakes and the electrocution switches. It's cool, and the coffins. So they had good imagery to work with. It ties together really nicely. It matches the pro artwork on the cabinet, I think, better than the box one, the road case set that was out there and available, and that was sort of highly debated. But as far as artwork on the playfield and back glasses go, I have to give it to Metallica. AC/DC's artwork, it's really some cut and paste photos of the band with a lot of fire and just color. I don't think there's any real great artwork per se going on here, so I can't give it that. I do like the art package on the Back in Black version a lot. I like the lightning and the blue lightning with the black background and the black armor. I really like that aesthetic, but that's certainly not enough for me to say that it could win over the Metallica artwork, so Metallica wins artwork. Sound. This is an interesting one, because a lot of people are going to just choose whichever band they like best and say that has the better sound. I am funny because in my life I've been a much bigger Metallica fan, but I probably catch myself listening to old AC/DC more nowadays, just because it is not quite as dark and quite as serious, and Metallica stuff can bum me out a little bit sometimes. And I've liked, I like Death Magnetic, the recent album, a lot too, but it's kind of dark and heavy music where sometimes, man, I want to hear It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll by AC/DC. I love that. It makes me happy. So sometimes AC/DC is just a little more upbeat and fun and a little easier to swallow. So I'll call the music sort of even to me. My problem is here, on one of the main modes that I think a lot of people play on AC/DC is the rock and roll train mode, because I believe that lights up the train ramp. I hate the choo-choo train sound. I hate it. It drives me insane. Drives me nuts. Bothers me. But I like the oys. I like the Steve Ritchie voice a lot on the AC/DC game. Sparky's cool on Metallica. The James Hetfield callouts kind of are a little forced to me. It's all right. I like the ending music on AC/DC. Like when your game's over, that ending music it sticks with me. Like it's in my head a lot. Here's why AC/DC wins sound, though. It's the integration with the game. When you choose a different song in AC/DC, you're playing a different mode to the game. That's kind of obvious and kind of awesome. It really affects the gameplay completely, and there's a lot that goes into it. Whereas with Metallica, you're basically just choosing your background music. And although, on the whole, I'm probably a bigger Metallica fan in the long run, for a pinball machine, I like the idea of the songs having modes. So AC/DC wins the sound for me, despite the choo-choo train noises. All right, gameplay. This is one of the most important things when we talk about a pinball machine. Which gameplay do you like better? I'll call it like this. I'll simplify this a little bit because we're getting to the end of this show. AC/DC is much more difficult. The game is very, very hard. I typically will have 3 really poor games and 1 okay game. And then 1 out of 15 games will be pretty good. Metallica, I think, is much more controllable and is a little bit easier to navigate through. And I can, out of, say, 10 games played, have 3 or 4 pretty good games, 1 really good one, and 5 or 4 below average and 1 horrible game. I don't have a lot of really horrible games on Metallica for whatever reason. A little more forgiving. And it might be just the distance of everything to the flippers. Because a lot of times when I'm playing Metallica, I'm shooting at the ramps, I'm shooting at Sparky. The inline drop targets, I love shooting at those, although they can be dangerous. I like the gameplay of Metallica better, I think, as a just step up and play and get the ball flowing and get into the groove. I like the gameplay of AC/DC better when I'm trying to get better as a pinball player and challenge myself. Long term, however, I go with Metallica. I think that there's something just beautiful about those metal ramps and the way the ball loops around them. Feels nicely to the gameplay. There's a flow to it. I love the Sparky shot. I like the magnet. I like the really difficult side shots on Metallica with the fuel shot. There's a reactiveness to that I really like with the sound effect. Whereas AC/DC, I would say the pluses to me are the drop targets on these limited premium editions. I do like that a lot. But I find myself just trying to survive on AC/DC a little too much. And maybe if I owned the game, I'd feel differently. But that's why I'm going to give the nod here to Metallica, because it's not so much as just a game of survival for me. I feel like I can get into it a little bit better. And this is obviously for me. So I give the gameplay check to Metallica. Lastability. Lastability as a game. This is where you get the arguments going. I have talked to a lot of people on this because I've been thinking about buying a Metallica Pro. And people tell me Metallica, they never get sick of. They always want to keep going. I think the rule set has gotten Metallica to a place where it's going down as maybe an all-time great game in pinball history. I think AC/DC has really cool developed rules as well. Really makes you think about what song you're picking, what order you're picking when you move into the jukebox and can change songs. There's strategy and what you should be shooting at now. You want to be in certain modes for multi-ball. So there's a lot going on there. Metallica, I think that the way the inserts work, the way you progress through the different modes, and trying to get to that end of the line mode, which is kind of the sought after wizard mode there. I think the overall consensus is Metallica probably wins out. Although AC/DC is so hard, that's going to last a long time too. But sometimes really hard games burn you out, and you stop going back to them. I think the artwork and the sound of AC/DC wears me out to look at a little bit too. It's the brightest game I've ever played, certainly. It really jumps out at you. Metallica, a little bit less to that. So I think based on a lot of third-party opinion, I give lastability to Metallica. Value. All right, here's where you get real tricky, because I think AC/DC Premium is a better value, because I'm judging it sort of against the Pro, and this was my caveat I was speaking about earlier. I won't buy the AC/DC Pro. I will not. If I found a good deal on the Premium, I would be very open-minded to that, because I would like that game. The changes from the Pro to the Premium are just too vast. The artwork alone, with having this giant, either Lucy or giant Angus Young face, and let me rephrase that. So the giant Lucy thing, I'm talking about an aftermarket mod that somebody made up. It's an Angus Young face. Let's all be real clear. Giant Angus Young face, or possibly some sort of overlay to cover him up, versus the cool lit up underplay field. Not even close. I want the underplay field. All the stand-up targets instead of all the drop targets, boy, it changes the way that game plays a lot. A lot. That's a bummer. The bell not swinging back on the original Pros, I think they fixed that on the new Pros, the LED Pros. That was a problem too, definitely. No cross ramp changes gameplay up a little bit. The AC/DC Premium was a much better value to me if you're buying AC/DC. However, in Metallica, when you look at Premium to Pro, I don't see the value as much in the Premium. You lose the hammer. That's okay. A lot of people don't like the hammer there. You lose the real ball locks inside the coffin. That's okay. The virtual locks is kind of cool looking too. The cross doesn't move up from underneath the playfield. And a few other small things. I didn't see the value of the Premium as much. And when you start talking about Premium versus Premium, AC/DC wins to a lot of people because the answer is, well, AC/DC Premium wins because you'll go buy the Metallica Pro. And I agree completely with that. That's actually where I'm at too. However, that's not what we're showdowning here? Showdowning? Wow, I don't know how to say that. That's not what's happening. This is a showdown versus AC/DC Premium versus Metallica Premium. And in my mind, when I take into consideration the last little bit, the X factor, the one that I look at and just want to go play, they're side by side in an arcade. The one that pulls me in a little bit more is Metallica Premium. And in this showdown, this death match of these two great music-themed, rock and roll band-themed pinball machines by Stern, Metallica wins. Metallica wins the showdown. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. It's the blue corner. It's Metallica. So, with that, episode 125 is in the books. Heading to New York City this weekend for the Big Lebowski launch party. Cannot wait. There will be more from Coast to Coast Pinball in the next few days. Looking forward to hearing what other people say in regards to the Highway Dennis Nordman split. What do you think? Did I make the right call? Metallica Premium over AC/DC Premium? I know that one's going to be controversial. People are going to have very strong opinions one way or the other. So, thank you very much for listening. We will see you in episode 126 very shortly. Take care.